One of the biggest stories of the Trump era is the massive political mobilization of women. From the very first day after the inauguration, when millions participated in the women's marches, to the record number of women running for office in this year's elections. Earlier today, I got to sit down with three women who have been pillars of the feminist movement for decades. Gloria Steinem, Jane Fonda, and Robin Morgan, the co-founders of the Women's Media Center, to get their unique perspective on this moment. We're a few days away from an election, and it feels like this year women's political activism is the driving story. How does it feel to you as someone who's watched many fluctuations in sort of capital F feminism in America this year?
In my very long life, this is the most enthusiasm I have ever seen.
Really? You really mean that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've never seen anything like it. And I've never seen so much worry about the process of voting. So the good news is the activism and the consciousness and the anger and the caring, and the bad news is what's going to happen to them at the polls.
You would say that the activism now, the sort of awakened, the degree to which people are mobilized is more than even these sort of peak iconic moments in the 1960s?
Yeah, much more. I mean, remember that was huge consciousness and activism and awakening, but it was about maybe a third of the country. Now it's the majority of the country, and certainly the majority of women. But there is a third of the country that is opposed to losing their old hierarchical identity by sex and by race, and they are mad, right? And they are restricting the vote in many cases.
You've been doing a lot of stuff on the ground, right? I mean, you've been sort of out there. I wonder what it looks like from where you've seen it.
I've spent a lot of time in Michigan the last 2 years with Lily Tomlin, trying to get a measure on the ballot for one fair wage that would raise the minimum wage to $12 and include tipped workers in that, which is what's
almost always
unusual.
Carved out in minimum wages.
Right. And we did it. We got it on the ballot, and then the Republican legislature took it off the ballot and voted it into law, making it very clear that they would gut it after the election. And they did it as a form of subtle voter suppression.
They were scared of it.
Yeah, they knew the people who are unlikely voters would be coming to the polls to vote themselves a raise, so they took it off. So I was with Taraji P. Henson and Patrisse Cullors traveling all over Michigan last weekend, talking to people about this and about the importance of going to the polls, and people seem energized. People are woke. Every woman I know is asking me, where do we go? How do we get out the vote? How do we canvass? I don't know anybody that's not involved.
That's the encouraging part. You know, I was thinking about this last night at the awards, because obviously we're very proud of the Women's Media Center, and it's 11 years, and wow, grown hugely and stuff. But I was thinking there are literally two factors now in this country on which democracy itself depends. And if we can begin to take back democracy here, there will be a ripple effect across the world with places like Brazil, just like there was a ripple effect in the negative on the right wing. And one of those factors is a free, strong press.
Yeah.
And the other factor is the rising, visible political force of women, both of which we're seeing in this country. And I got suddenly so proud because I realized the Women's Media Center stands right at that intersection, and I quelled.
Well, because there's this sort of interesting thing happening representationally right now, right? In both those spheres. So in media, the New York Times had this piece about sort of the Me Too movement and all these powerful men who have been, have lost their positions and often replaced with women.
Right.
So there's a kind of representational change happening slowly and painfully, but surely. And it's the same thing at the candidate level. I mean,
that's right.
You are just seeing more women candidates than we've ever seen before.
Well, it's not only, I worried as an old organizer that after the Women's March it might, fade. People would think I marched, I had a pussycat hat, and they'd go home. But and sustaining it is always the hard part. But not only did they sustain it, the people have been adding to it. The teachers who are walking off, in state after state, 80% of teachers are women. The the high school movement, anti-guns and so forth, over half women. I mean, the one fair wage is basically women.
I mean, if you go to any
and there are guys involved. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mean, and they're terrific, but I mean, it really is for the first time women's leadership. I mean, and it's continuing, and there's women who are just too damn pissed off at this point. You know?
One of the things we know is that economics is at the root. Healthcare and economics. People are having to work, I don't care what the papers say about wages, people are having to work 2 and 3 jobs and still are living below the poverty line, and most of them are women, and most of those women are women of color, and it's just unconscionable. But a lot of millennials are going to go to the polls because they know that if they don't, they're going to have to be living with the consequences longer than we do.
Well, one of those consequences, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you since the Kavanaugh confirmation. I mean, one of the consequences is there is now this majority on the Supreme Court and a real question about Roe's future. How did you feel watching the Kavanaugh confirmation play out?
Obviously, he was somebody that was not even on the first list of candidates. He was there because he believes in the power of the presidency over the Supreme Court. He was there for a specific purpose. But you know, obviously I believed the accusations against him, but even if you didn't, if you saw him on television refusing to let his wife talk, all right. Yeah. She sat there the entire time, and finally the interviewer asked her a question, and he answered. I mean,
she opened her mouth, but nothing came out. That moved right in.
That says it all, right? I mean, the one thing worse than having him on the Supreme Court is to be married to him.
But clearly, it lit a fire, a prairie fire.
Do you think it did? Because there was all this talk about, oh, this is really energizing Republicans because they think he's being treated so unfairly, and that's going to show up on Election Day.
Well, I don't know how they can think he was treated unfairly, but we won't go there. That involves logic. But there were women on street corners talking to each other about it, just furious, absolutely furious. There's 2 new bestsellers out about women and rage. I mean, being not afraid to be angry anymore, and what a progressive political force women's anger has been if you look at the real history. So yeah, I think that the Kavanaugh hearing, and I you know, I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm thinking, well, you know, maybe we can impeach him once we have a little power back. Anybody, but starting with Kavanaugh and maybe moving on to other people.
How do you, I know a lot of people who have had a very hard time kind of emotionally with the last 2 years. It just is exhausting. It's exhausting, even if you don't do it every day for a living, just being a citizen. I mean, you guys have been in the fight for a while. Like, what do you tell people who feel like
that's what you do? You stay in the fight.
Yeah.
I remember right after the 2016 election, I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. We had to go to Atlanta and speak to 1,600 women. It was hard.
Was it like the day after? Or?
Yeah. But and then I went to Standing Rock, and I was renewed. When you're actually doing something that you know can make some kind of difference, it really helps. It really helps. And being in community with other people, mostly women.
From each other.
Yeah.
That's the key, actually. You only despair if you're alone, but as soon as you're together, you reinforce each other, and it actually becomes boring not to do it.
Yeah, it's like value added. But the other thing is that when we say this is the most important, you know, election, and then some people say, oh, God, we've been saying that for the last decade. But this is because, and it's true for comparisons with the 60s and 70s, this time the clock is ticking on the planet.
That's right.
And that's a different thing altogether. I mean, we got to really wake up and be very serious now, because it's not as though people can grow into this and take their time developing it. And there's a real
existential crisis is right there.
Yeah.
And the environment does not change back, no matter what the so-called president says.
Are you hopeful?
Yes, because hope is a form of planning. I mean, you know, you can't let them take your hope away. That's the energy.
Yeah, that's what they want to do, is take the hope away. So we will not permit that.
Hope is activism.
Yeah.
And if our hopes weren't already real inside us, we couldn't even hope them. So they already have a
It's
reality.
the necessary precondition to
Yes,
making the world
absolutely.
better.
I want people to imagine waking up one morning and feeling good about things and going out in the street and seeing people smile at each other and give each other high fives and see kids running around and old people sitting on benches and laughing and spontaneous circle dances breaking out and realizing, oh my God, it's November 7th. And we need to imagine it.
Yeah.
To get back to that place or forward to that.
Well, there's no one better to give this kind of advice than you. Thank you very much for making time.
Thanks for what you do,
For
Chris.
everything
Yeah.
you do all the time.
Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and Robin Morgan. Really, really thank you so much.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.